Hello and welcome to another video. In this video, I am going to tell you why I believe that resin bases are better for armies. And I'm going to do it by demonstrating on a commission that I've got on the table right now for some Thousand Suns. The first thing to say about basing an army is you don't have the time to go in and do all of that really nice quality texturing and construction that I would do on a set piece or a diorama or maybe even some of the hero pieces. That is far and away the best way to go for your basing, but with an army you want to actually be able to play with it. And for me, having resin bases provides a much better experience, much quicker than using texture rollers or using texture paints to try and establish some visual interest on the bases. But on top of that, because all of the form is there for you, they're really quick to paint. There's no cleanup needed at all. All you do is take a toothbrush, an electric one if you have it, and scrub them clean with some soap and warm water. Let them dry off, and then apply a quick primer. I use Rattle Can Rust-Oleum Painter's Touch 2X Flat Black for mine, but whatever primer works for you is going to be fine. Having primed it, left it overnight to dry. The first pass of this is a white zenithal, and for this I actually used Pro Acryl's Bold Titanium White. It's not what I usually use. Generally I'll use Liquitex White Titanium White ink, but the Pro Acryl line is great. It flows really nicely. It's pretty good through an airbrush. The thing you'll notice is compared to what you normally see for a zenithal, here I'm using a very sharp angle. I'm pretty low to the surface of the base and kind of airbrushing across the base. Now this is not realistic for what you're trying to achieve with a traditional zenithal, but it achieves a much greater contrast in the base. Most bases don't have much up and down to them compared to the model, and so if you try and do a traditional zenithal on them, really what you're doing is just painting the base white, because there's not a lot of shadow for it to develop. So by going low at a low angle to the base, you're building up an artificial shadow that you can use, and it won't be true to real world, but it will look natural and it will look a lot better once you get to the end of the process. Having completed our zenithal, the next step is to base coat. Now here again I'm using the airbrush, and I'm using Red Earth FW ink from Daleroni. Now if you were to do this yourself without an airbrush, get a regular model paint that is a similar color, so you're looking for a slightly desaturated orangey red color, and just dry brush over the sand in particular. Don't worry too much if you hit the structures on the bases. We're gonna go over that later on, as you will see, but you do want to make sure that the earth is covered and from multiple angles. You'll see here I'm actually turning the bases a little bit, unlike with the zenithal. I'm softening those harsh transitions, those harsh shadows, and giving the overall tone of the base more warmth. With our base coat done, it's time to crack out that dry brush, and here we are starting off with just really bringing more vibrancy into the red that we're using. And for this I'm using golden heavy body acrylic Pyrrole red. Literally any Pyrrole red is going to be basically the same. If you only have model paints, just find yourself a really good saturated pure red. That is what we're looking for here. I'm pretty generous with the dry brush. These resin bases from Elric's Hobbies have a really good level of texture to them, so they naturally lend themselves to dry brushing, which makes it quicker for you and a really cool, highly transitioned result when you're done. So just a quick dry brush. I'm not even taking that much paint off of the brush itself. I'm just using light pressure to control how much paint I'm depositing on the surface of the models. Now at this point I am trying to avoid hitting those ruins, the crumbled structures on the bases as much as possible, because I'm wanting to work quickly. I'm not waiting for the models to properly dry between each of these dry brushes, and if red gets onto those structures too much, it's going to mix with the next colors and muddy the colors that we're seeing. Having dry brushed our Martian sand, our red earth, up to a nice vibrant color, we're now going to start giving some attention to the ruins themselves. Again, I want quite a saturated color to give this some pop, and for this I use Sol Yellow from Scale Color. The Thousand Suns Marines themselves are largely a kind of cyan blue, so using these high contrast red, yellow, warm colors will really give some high degree contrast to the Marines themselves. The yellow dry brush I'm applying here is pretty generous. I'm almost just painting the model yellow. It's only the most recessed areas that are kind of being left at the previous stages of quite dark colors. So, having got our yellow down on the structures, on the ruins, it's time to brighten that up a bit and increase the contrast a little further. To do this, I'm introducing some heavy body titanium white acrylic paint. The one I use is from Winsor & Newton's Galleria line, but it really doesn't matter what the brand is. The reason for using heavy body acrylics is they are a thick consistency, which makes it a lot easier for them to dry brush with. If you try and use thinner paints like traditional model paints, it can be very difficult to get a dry brush that isn't streaky because you're introducing too much moisture into the brush. This is why Games Workshop's Citadel dry paints are the texture that they are. Now you'll notice here that I am using the same brush that I used for the yellow. I'm just adding in white and drying it out. This is because I want to smooth those blends, and by using the white with the yellow, I'm getting less of a sharp transition, and then if needed, I can go back in again after I've done them all with more white to increase that degree of contrast. And of course, the final step, that lap of victory, black rimming your bases. Now, it doesn't have to be black, but you really should try and finish off your bases properly with just a nice, smooth, single color application around the rim of each base. In this case, I use black. I generally do. It's, I guess, a little traditional, a little old-fashioned these days when Games Workshop seems to have moved over to Steel Legion Drab for theirs, but I still like it. It's what I got used to. In this case, I'm just using a Citadel Abaddon Black. In the past, I've used Thermal Black. Any pure black paint is going to work great, or any color you feel works well for your bases. I did 2 coats of this black rim just to get a nice, smooth, consistent color around the edges, and that's all there was to it. As you can see, I did a few more than the 5 pictured. I did them all in one go, and the whole thing took maybe an hour from the white zenithal through to taking these final photos. It's a really quick process, and I think it gives much better results than what you're likely going to achieve with texture rollers, texture paints, and tufts. If you want to give it a go yourself, why not try Elric's Hobbies? And if you want to help me out and help yourself out, use the code in the description below for 10% off. Elric Hobbies isn't asking me to make this video. I really do love using resin bases for my commissions and for my own stuff. I've got trench work bases again from Elric Hobbies right in front of me that I'm using for a bolt action army right now. Thanks for watching, and for now, later days.